What up, comrades? Hope everyone's doing great. We're here to talk about ACPU's Bond stories and a special event, ACPU Freeze, which is when Query, one of the characters, got introduced to the game. So we're going to start with Query's Bond story because apparently it takes place before the event. After playing through the event and the Bond story, I'm like, I don't know. We're also going to cover Polly and Miranda, both of which have favorite items. I have not done the favorite item quest, and normally when I haven't done the favorite item quest, I'm able to get the information off the fandom site, but the fandom site doesn't have Polly, so I might just throw that, her favorite item thing, in like the big thing I do with all the favorite items that I've missed, like Julia's and stuff, that I haven't been able to cover, even though I've covered those characters already. Yeah, because I got like Julia had a treasure or favorite item later, Exia, who else? Miranda we're going to cover now. I'm trying to think. I think a lot of them I've been able to cover. Drake we missed. So there's going to be at least 3 or 4. I might just take one of these weeks and just like cover all their shit down when I have some extra time. And hopefully Polly's will be up by that point, or I'll have unlocked it. I'm working on Bay, and I already did Julia for like the current iteration of favorite items, and Tove. So she's like Polly's the last one on the list. Okay, so let's get to Query's story. So Query's Bond story, it starts off again with us like finishing assignments and trying to relax and chill, and then we start getting a bunch of complaints. Like Ainz comes in and complains about ACPU not doing something, and then Leader comes in to complain, and so we're like, all right, well we better go fucking see what's going on over there. So we head over there, and ACPU is in the, I don't think I've mentioned this, but all these things like the toy store and ACPU and the Maid Cafe and Cafe Sweetie, they're in the outpost with us. They're not in the Ark. So oftentimes you hear me talk about like, oh, we go to the outpost, we go to the Ark, or we go to like the toy store or whatever, and that is every place we go to that is not like the Ark, like all the kind of main places that keep coming up. Coin Rush, they're all in the outpost. Wait, actually I think Coin Rush is in the Ark. Yes, Coin Rush is in the Ark. But ACPU is in the they are in the outpost, but they function in the Ark as well. Okay. So we head over there. We talked to Polly and Miranda, and they let us know that they've lost like the new member of their team, right? And we find out that this member's been around for a while, but she was doing like accounting or something, and then they brought her on to the team because they needed some extra help. So she joined Polly and Miranda in like their business. But at some point she went out to like do something, and she hasn't returned. So they're like, "Can you go find her? We're like super busy trying to like." The reason why ACPU hasn't been like responsive to a lot of the stuff is because they're just like overworked and understaffed. So if we can go find Query for them, they can get to some of those like requests, and then we can help. We can meet Query and bring her back. So we head out and we hear this woman. We can't find her anywhere, and then we hear this woman and child talking about some lady with the pink hair that's like acting funny, and we're like, "Oh, that must be her." So we go find Query, and she's like staring at this like bench in the park, and we're like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "There's a bug," and like that's a breadcrumb, and she's like, "Oh, I can't see." And then she's like, "Oh, Polly's here," and she starts talking to like this doll who's just like in a trash can or something, and it's like, holy shit, this chick can't like see for shit. So we talked to her about that. We find out that she has a vision problem, and she doesn't wear glasses, even though she probably needs it, which is rare, but you know, everything's like kind of blurry to her and whatnot. And so we talked to her about heading back to ACPU, and so she heads over there and she starts apologizing to a towel that's hanging on a rack, thinking it's Miranda. And I'm not going to keep going over this. This is like the whole gag of the Bond story. Like it's like every 5 seconds, it's like, oh, she's talking to the wrong thing. Just every time I mention her talking to somebody, she is talking to the wrong thing. It is like comedy ensues kind of like stuff where it's like, okay, whatever. Anyway, so at that point, Polly asks us to give Query a tour of the outpost so she can become more familiar with it, so that she doesn't need to, holy shit, just go. It's like people making right turns, I'm making a left turn, just fucking go. Anyway. And we're like, sure, there's no problem. That sounds good. So she mentions that we are becoming more and more clear to her, the more like affection and bond we have with her, essentially. So she says that while she's talking to a door. Ha ha! Hilarity ensues. So we take her hand, and we head out. So first place she wants to go is she wants to visit Mighty Tools. She wants to place. So we go there first. We go there. She starts talking to Vault instead of Leader. Leader follows up on our complaint. We introduce Query, and then we find out that the thing that she needs help with is a missing part that was stolen, and she sent Senti off to buy a new one. But then Query is like, "What's that over there?" And Leader's like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "Right here." And she picks up like the missing part, and like, "Holy shit, how'd you see that?" She's like, "It was sparkling." And Leader's like, "That's crazy." So then Query wants to go meet like someplace dangerous, and so we take her to Cafe Sweetie. Okay, so we find Freema asleep, and then Milk and Sugar are just hanging out. We introduce them to Query, who's a new ACPU person. And then Sugar ends up being like, Milk's like kind of whatever about it, but then Sugar's like super nice. And she offers to give her some free sugar coffee. And then when everyone's like, wow, that's weird. Sugar's just not nice to anybody. So she had some with the sugar coffee and also a speeding ticket that she got. And it's like, hey, maybe if you don't mind, you can get that dismissed. And then Query's like, hey, what's that going on behind you in that cabinet? And because Milk at some point was like, hey, what about happened to all that money you had that's just lying around that we got from her last job? And Sugar's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so Milk runs over and opens the cabinet, and it's full of fucking money. And then Corey's like, you can use that to pay your ticket. And Sugar's like, wah, wah, wah. So then Milk loves that she essentially called Sugar out of her bullshit and invites her to come over anytime she wants. And then Corey's like, thanks. And then like slams into Milk's like vending machine for milk coffee and like destroys it, which makes Milk like enraged. And so we spent some time fixing it. And then we head out, and Corey seems pretty down about everything. And we're like, hey, you know what? Let's take you to like one more place. Hopefully that'll make you feel better. So we take her back to ACPU. And once we're there, we talk to Polly and Miranda about everything that happened during the day. And Polly and Miranda are so proud of Query and all the things that she did and how she's such a help. And they're super glad that she's on their team with them and stuff. And it's like super a lot of glad handing and stuff. And so Query, that kind of cheers Query up. So a couple days go by, and then we're like hanging out, and Query runs up to talk to Leader, and she's just talking to Bolt again. Which Polly's like, oh my gosh, it's driving me nuts. But then she spots us from like very far away because she was out on patrol with Polly and Miranda, and she sees us like perfectly clear. And Polly's like, holy shit, how do you do that? And she's like, I don't know. But she tells Polly and Miranda that she can see us clearly, probably because we're nice to her and we treat her with respect or whatever. And it's just part of like whatever her crazy like fucking thing is. And then she mentions that she knows that we're just as handsome as everyone thinks she is, or thinks we are. And this makes us smile. And then Query's like, I got you, big guy. I'm off. And then she heads in like the wrong direction. And everyone has like a little laugh. So now let's talk about ACPU Freeze. It's a Halloween event, fun. So there's a Halloween party coming up, and there's a whole thing about special candy, about contests, about haunted houses, and all that stuff. And then we get some lady laughing about making special candy, and it's super sketchy. Anyway, we move over to us and the counters, and they're all super psyched for Halloween. Then Polly shows up, and she needs some help with maintaining public order because this event is so big. And instead of just being able to go and enjoy the event, we have to, as a special commando unit, help out ACPU. Oh, goodness. So we head over to the police station to learn more. At the station, we meet Query, who's the newest member of ACPU, and we just did her Bond story, so obviously we know about her, but the counters haven't met her yet. So her Bond story takes place before this. Let's see. Anyway, so we head out on our mission. So the mission is we team up with Query at the park because she's blind, and we're like, cool. And then Ines is going to go with Polly to... Oh, no. So, hold on. I'm just concerned about the mall. The girls... Okay. We, time to go shopping. Okay, yeah. So we don't go there. The first thing we do is Ines and Neon want to go shopping for special candy, and Rappy doesn't want to go because she's scared of ghosts, which comes up kind of regularly. Anyway, and then Query asks if she can come along as well, and the girls are like, heck yeah, having an even number is much better than having an odd number. So we head over there. They're all juiced up about getting the candy and whatnot, and Query's just hanging back with us for a bit while Ines and Neon kind of go wild. So we check up on her, and she's just like, I don't know, all the loud noises from like the stores and whatnot kind of freak me out. We then find Novel. She's trying to bust some lady for a murder charge because of like the Halloween decorations she's selling. So Query steps in and calms Novel down, convinces her that the situation's under control and that she doesn't need to worry about it so much because, they're just fucking props. And then so Novel's like, great, thank you so much, you're the best. And then she pieces out. Next we run into Drake. Query gets super concerned because Drake says she's a villain, and we're like, hey, wait for it. Because her dastardly plan is to give out candy to children so they don't forget her. And Query's like, oh, I see that now. At that point, Drake leaves. We buy some candy. We thank Query for coming with us, and we tell her we'll see her tomorrow night at the park where we're all going to work together. Let's see. So the next evening, we arrive at the park a little bit early. ACPU is waiting, and this is where we split up into 3 teams. So it's us and Query are going to go to like the horror zone. Ines and Polly are going to go to like the dessert zone, and then Miranda's going to go with Rappy and Neon because Miranda needs like extra attention being kept to her, so Rappy can handle it. And they're going to go to the game zone. So as we're heading over to the horror zone, Query gets a little concerned, and then this is based on like our previous conversation about the startling noises and everything. We're like, nah, it'll be fun. This is a place made for kids. Don't worry about it. So later on the patrol, we switch over to the dessert zone where Ainz is like overwhelmed with all the decadence, and Polly really has to like rein her in so she doesn't get too crazy. Meanwhile, over at the game zone, Miranda is getting super riled up because someone has like a toy gun, and so she runs over to speak to the operator, and Neon's like, yeah, you should definitely go talk to her about it. And at that point, she gets conned into trying the game, and then Neon gets excited and wants to try the game as well, and Rappy's like, oh no, what's going on? Meanwhile, over at the horror zone, it's actually incredibly scary, and then we take a look at this pamphlet that Query gave us that said it was for children, and we see that it is specifically not for children and only for adults, because it's super duper scary. We offer to switch with the other groups, and she's like, no, I'll be fine as long as you're here with me. At that point, this woman approaches us, and Query like completely freaks out because she has like this fantastic costume and she came out of nowhere. And we're like, she didn't come out of nowhere. She was like walking up here for like a ways. And it's like, oh yeah, that's right. The joke is Query can't see things. Anyway, we chat with her for a bit. She gives us some candy because she made way too much and she wants us to share it. And we're like, cool. And so we give her some of our police badge candy and then she leaves. And then we're like, oh, hey, you saw her costume? And Query's like, yeah, I did. That's what freaked me out so much was that I turned and she was like standing there and I could actually see her well. And we're like, oh, that's odd. Normally you can't see things well. And she's like, I know, just certain things. It's kind of funny. And we're like, why do you think that is? And she's like, I don't know. And we never get an answer to that ever. Okay. Anyway, we're a bit concerned about it. But then Query's like, hey, I'm so excited. Let's go hand out some candy. And then someone runs up scaring her again, but this time it's Drake. And she is here to give all the children candy. We're like, hey, that's a bad idea. This is a place only for older people. And she's like, oh, that's a good point. So we give her some of the woman's candy, and then she takes off. At this point, the event is still about an hour away from opening up, but we hear people starting to get ready, so we head out on our patrol. Meanwhile, back over at the game zone, Miranda, Rappy, and Neon hear some commotion. It's Drake and some kids, and she's handing out candy, and they chat with Drake, and then Drake gives them some candy, and then Neon eats it and vomits. And everyone's like, the fuck? And then Miranda's like, the candy you gave me was delicious. I have no idea what's going on. At that juncture, Novel shows up wearing a fucking sexy nurse costume, which I wish I'd been around to buy, because I'm like, I spent $20 just on a costume for a character I'll never use because she's shit in the game, but she's definitely one of the waifus. She, for me at least. Oh man, I would tear this thing up. Anyway, just saying. She tries the candy and she's like, this is great. What's wrong with you, Neon? And then Rappy mentions that the candy Neon had was not an animal candy, which is the kind of candy that Drake has handing out to like get children to love her because she's a villain. And then Drake mentions that Query gave her the round candies that made Neon want to vomit, and the Novel tries it and she also wants to vomit, and she's like, this is terrible, this is an emergency. So Rappy is like, is it really emergency though? And then Neon says that Query's the commander, and then Rappy's like, yes, it is an emergency, we must stop this from happening, we have to protect the commander. So emergency initiated. Over at the dessert zone, it's getting super crowded. Polly and Ainz hear some arguing. We go check it out, and it's a woman who's throwing like a tantrum because some candy that she got from like this shop was making her kid throw up, and she wants to be a huge Karen about it. Polly steps in, and they go to see what the issue is inside the store. Once inside, the woman says that there was the lady dressed with a ghost is the one who gave her the candy, and then the store lady's like, that's not one of our employees, that's just some random fucking person. You got to be more careful with your kids taking candy from strangers, you dumb bitch. Then Polly gets a call from Miranda about the candy, and it's like, uh-oh. So Polly orders a cessation of candy distribution in the whole event, like immediately. Then they head over with Ainz to the horror zone. Meanwhile, it's a mistranslation, or it's probably some crappy localizer to be completely honest, because it's like, meanwhile in the ghost zone, and I'm like, ghost zone? You called it a horror zone like 5 seconds ago. Like, why is it a ghost zone now? Anyway, we finish giving away all the candy, and then we try it, and then we vomit. And Query's like, oh no. And then we get a call from Miranda, and she catches us up on the whole situation. Apparently, the candy supposedly also makes you lose your sense of taste, like in the Christmas event with Emma. And I'm like, oh, is this crazy lady Emma? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I think she'd recognize the commander and vice versa. But it's hilarious. They redid the thing. So we decide to head over to the dessert zone to meet up with the others and do damage control. Query immediately runs in the wrong direction. Ha ha ha. Hilarity ensues, of course. So we meet up to discuss the situation. The girls have already sent Drake and Novel out to make an announcement, and then the announcement comes on, and they announce that there's a game where Novel and Drake will steal any candy that is not hidden. So all the kids think it's hilarious and start hiding their candy, which is like super awesome and genius. We then talk about the suspect and how apparently she's had like a witch costume in the horror zone and then a ghost costume in the dessert zone, and it's like going to make it pretty hard to find her if she's switching costumes. And then we mentioned that Query can see her easily. So that's going to make it easier because Query can't see shit. So she can see us and then like this lady. So she just gets like high up or something. Then she'll be able to track her down more easily. Also, for some reason, the candy the lady hands out, she can also see clearly. And so she starts tracking the candy because there's just like candy on the ground, I guess. It's like a trail. And it leads to this giant, beautiful, like edible gingerbread house that's in the middle of the desert zone. And so as we're about to go in, ACPU is like, no, we got this. You guys wait here. And I'm like, cool, sounds good. So then Query leads Pulley and Miranda inside and they track the candy to a wall, which ends up being like a secret passage. They bust in with their machine guns ready to go. Or I think, does Pulley have like a shotgun? I can't remember. I don't use any of these characters. No. Query has a rocket launcher, I'm pretty sure. I think Pulley, I think she has a machine gun or an assault rifle. Anyway, the lady's like super surprised, and ACPU is surprised, and they're like, what's going on? And they talk. And the woman's candy doesn't make you lose a sense of taste. That's just some bullshit Miranda pulled out of her ass. In fact, most of the candy she made is fine. She just made one batch bad on purpose, you know, because kids like that stupid shit and stuff. And the ACPU is like, what? And it's like, that's actually a very valid point. Pulley gets super frustrated, but decides to just hand her over to the event people because technically she didn't do anything illegal, because if she's not causing real damage, it's just like gross candy she's handing out. And it's like, well, you're an asshole, but I mean, whatever. They then report back about how Novel and Miranda were wrong about the loss of taste. Novel gets super frustrated with that and all that. But anyway, the event's still going on, so it's back to patrolling. So the rest of the event goes by without any more incidents. And that's like the end of the main story. And then we get like a epilogue with Drake. So it says, meanwhile, Drake, she's out trying to steal candy, but the event's over, and some kids tell her the event's over and she needs to stop. And so instead of that, she decides she's going to hand out her villain candy, which makes her villainous. And one of the kids is like, well, why makes it so villainous? And she's like, because you'll eat it and you'll never be satisfied by candy ever again. And which ends the ACPU freeze. All right, so let's get to the other members of ACPU. So we'll start with Pulley. She's the actual squad leader. We did Query first because her event takes place before, or her Bond story took place before ACPU freeze. And then Pulley has a favorite item, but as of the recording of this video, there is, I'm actually going to look right now as I slowly talk. As the recording of this video, it is not on the fandom site where I get some of these that I haven't unlocked, and I haven't unlocked her favorite item yet. It is still not on there. Okay, so I will, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, I still got to catch up on Julia's favorite item, and I think there's a couple more. I mentioned Drake, but I think I did Drake's because I didn't do Drake with her event with that when Laplace came out. I did it like much later, so I think I actually did hers. I'm pretty sure I did, but there'll be a few. I'll just have one of these videos just be like catch up on favorite items, maybe next year when all the new favorite items come out in 2026. But so we're just gonna do her Bond story, and then we'll do Miranda's. She has her treasure item, which I do have unlocked, so we'll talk about that. So Pulley and Miranda are trying to track down dog and cat snatchers. They use Pulley's nose to track them to a maid cafe. There they find a list that only Pulley can interpret, which is kind of odd, that talks about gene splicing. Back over at the outpost, they brought this information, and they were talking to us about the case. Miranda mentions that Pulley is kind of like a dog. She likes head pats, and she's really good with smelling things in her nose. And then we get a call from ACPU Command, and they've gone through the splicing list, and guess what? Pulley's name is there. What? Back over to the cafe, we go with Pulley, and there we find a switch that leads to a secret laboratory. Pulley mentions that this place looks very familiar, and we look around, but we don't find anything. Then we talk to her about her memories. She mentions that she was a police officer before becoming a Nikke, and that it's somewhat common for law enforcement officers who die, before retirement, that they get turned into Nikke so they can continue their service and whatnot. Then we are reminded... Let's see, we're talking about Ingrid and Pulley convinced. Then we are reminded of the fact that they are Nikke. Oh, and then after they get turned into Nikkes, they essentially, what is told is that, hey, this person went on like an extended vacation just because of like family issues, and then when they come back, they look exactly the same, I guess, but they're Nikkes now, so people don't like question, because it's one of those things where it's like, who else was like this? There was somebody else who was trying to hide the fact that they were actually Nikkes. I think, was it the maid? I don't remember. Oh no, it was Triangle. It was Eula and Admi and Pravity that they are kind of hiding the fact that they're Nikkes as well, because they work a lot with humans. Okay, that's right. So we talk about Ingrid and Pulley, who is convinced that Elysion, who she belongs to, Elysion, would be involved with like splicing humans and animals. So we go to leave this place, and then she trips over a collar, and it has Polly's name on it. And it's like, what? And there's a tag on there that says Elysion. So Polly wants to know more information. We decide that we need to reach out to Maxwell, since she's not a member of MMR, but she is like a scientist. So we go over and talk to her. She mentions that she did hear about some crazy guy who was doing the gene splicing, and that he got like kicked out of, that he was an Elysian scientist, but then he got kicked out, and then didn't know. She doesn't really know what happened to him after that. And so we decide to go over with Polly to talk to Ingrid. She does mention that she had a dog named Polly, and so the idea that she was spliced is becoming like stronger. Oh no, she calls over to Ingrid. So we go talk to Ingrid, and she admits that she had a dog and that it disappeared years ago. And then Polly says, hold on. Polly dogs. Oh no, sorry, I remember this wrong. Polly digs into it and finds out using her like detective skills that Ingrid had a dog named Polly. Then we contact Ingrid, and she says yes, she confirms it. Polly said when they go talk to Ingrid, Polly says that there's no criminality or anything to the scent of Ingrid, so she really doesn't think that she did any gene splicing or anything to do with this. So she wants to dig into it some more. So she finds out that there was a terrorist attack where someone put bombs in the heads of a lot of animals and then sent them to attack Elysion, which caused a huge explosion. This is when the dog Polly went missing. She also finds out that there was a human Polly on the case. And then there was a vacation, and then Nikke Polly showed up. So clearly she was a human. So maybe there was some splicing that came into this, right? The whole thing's very suspicious. She does some more work and finds out that there is a scientist, that the same scientist who was supposed to be doing the gene splicing that Maxwell told us about is on the Royal Road, and that he's continuing to do experiments. So it's time for a raid, which goes great. The guy is caught red-handed, all the animals are rescued. Ingrid is super grateful, and then she reveals something that she did not tell us before, which would have made things a lot less confusing. And she reveals that she planted the collar in the basement of the maid cafe for Polly to find. And the reason why is that when Polly was a human, she was hired by, her task was to work for Ingrid to find the dog that was missing, and she was engaged at this time, and so the Polly dog got taken and got a bomb planted in her head, and then she came, and then it was going to blow up Ingrid, but then human Polly saved Ingrid's life by jumping on the dog and taking the blast, and so then she became a human. She became a Nikke at that point. And that part of the reason why was because before she died, human Polly asked to become a Nikke so she could solve the case and find the guy who did this to her. And so Ingrid let it happen. So she just did it. So cool, everything won. Everyone won and got what they wanted. Ingrid got justice, and human Polly justice. Later, we're patting Polly's beautiful soft hair, and we're to make up lost time when Ingrid calls, and she's like, hey, I did some more pooling into this, and it seems like your DNA does have some dog DNA in it. After all. My bad. Which ends Polly's Bond story. All right, so now let's talk about Miranda. I've done her favorite item story, so we can't talk about that. It's kind of adorable. All right, so Miranda is kind of, there's several of these characters that I feel like get a bad, not rep, but they kind of get the short end of the stick. Because they're just like treated like dumbasses, like Moron and Miranda are prime examples. Anyway, so we're trying to relax, of course, because that's how these all start. When Miranda comes to see us, she has a dilemma. She reveals to us that she's a secret agent that was planted in ACPU by the central government. But she likes ACPU a lot, and recently she got a message from a guy named Mr. O. He says that they're pulling her out because she's causing more problems and she's solving, and she's not really doing a good job reporting back to them about things. And so she got super mad about it and came to us. She wants to prove that she can do her job, so she suggests that we take, I didn't go back and look at this because I'm lazy, but I thought she said, come take pictures of me so we can send them to this guy, and then later on we're taking video. It's video. So we're taking video of her doing things to like improve, to show that she's doing a good job. So we go out. She tries to do crowd control for like a skating expedition that Epinel's doing, and if you've not heard me mention Epinel, you will hear me mention Epinel here and like one or two other times ever. She's one of the least like involved characters in this. Anyway, fails to do that. Then she tries to help a child find her parents after she got lost and fails at that. Then we back to Polly and Miranda mistakes someone who calls to sell a safe to Polly as someone who is calling in a bomb threat. So fail again, and we record all this. And then Miranda's like, whatever, let me just send this to Mr. O anyway. We'll see what happens. And instead of sending it to Mr. O, she sends it to Mrs. O. And Mrs. O apparently is a person on her phone that is a tabloid lady who immediately broadcasts all Miranda's fuck ups, talking about how ACPU is having real problems. At that point, Miranda's like, ruh-roh. And then Polly races back and is like, holy shit. And we're like, and Miranda's like, I'm fucked. And it's like, there's an actual bomb threat at the park. And we're like, oh, thank goodness. We need to fix this. But before we fix it, the chief of police calls in Miranda and Polly to chew her out. But then Polly's like, I'm going to go take care of the chief and take the blame for it. You got to go find this bomb threat and take care of it. And so Miranda freaks out a little bit. She talks about she wants to quit the force, how Mr. O was right. And then we end up talking her out of it. And so we can head over to the park. So we get there, we look around, no bomb. Then Polly calls and says, hey, you need to get out there. We evacuated the whole place. Bomb disposal is going to come see if they can look up or they're going to come clean it up. And then Miranda's like, no, we got to find this because the explosion could still hurt people outside of like the park. And she does. Eventually, she finds a box, and then with the bomb in it, and she wants to just throw her body over it to protect everyone because she might live. And then we refuse to leave her alone with that. And so then there's like hilarity ensues with a comedic chase through the park before we finally tell her like, hey, we got to just disarm this thing, or we're both going to get kind of cooked. And so finally, she trusts us, and we're like, oh, hey, cut that wire right there. And so she does. And then as soon as she cuts it, she jumps on us and covers our head with her arms, and our whole vision goes white. And we wake up in the hospital later. And then we find out that our vision went white because Miranda grabbed our head so tightly that it cracked our skull and dislocated our shoulder. That the bomb was fine. It didn't do shit. Polly then comes in to berate Miranda about the whole situation. And Miranda decides to come clean about being a secret agent for the central government. And Polly's like, yeah, everyone knew that, you dumbass. Wah, wah, wah. So we talked to Miranda about, instead of, hey, how about you like ACPU so much, instead of quitting that job, how about you quit the secret agent job? Or the whatever you want. It's secret agent makes it sound like James Bond. She's like a government employee who's like put herself in there to write like reports about whether they're doing a good job or not. She then sends video off to Mr. O and thinks about quitting that whole situation, which she does. She later notices that everyone is now treating her differently now that she's not like a member of like the inspection crew, but she feels like a stronger camaraderie with them. So she's super happy. We then hug it out, which ends her Bond story. The favorite Adam story picks up with three shadowy figures that are lurking in a dark room. They talk about Agent Orange, who's Miranda, of course, needing to redeem herself for some fuck-up. Later, we're relaxing, as we do, when ACPU comes in. Miranda has graduated from traffic. Nice. She's now in charge of a criminal investigation, and we're going to go help her. And we're like, sure. So what's the dastardly deed? We got to figure it out. We got to figure out who's responsible, and there's clues everywhere. And then Polly takes us aside and says, hey, Miranda's the main suspect. And we're like, okie dokie. So first thing we do is we head to the police station. Their query gives us evidence against Miranda. Miranda recognizes everything from a pop balloon to Beatrice. Hey, the Beatrice the dog from Biscuit Story. I remember her. To a badge with Miranda's literal name on it. And Miranda's just like, oh, this person, I've done all these things. They must have been following me or doing this. Oh, they stole my badge, all this stuff. And we immediately get the idea that like, oh, this is like one of those like, she's on a criminal investigation and she's supposed to find a criminal, but it's just like her friends throwing her like a party and it's like a fun game. So obviously novels are involved in this because she's the best and I just want to anyway. So Query's like, I don't like shrugs at us and it's like, I don't know what to do. And we're like, well, what's next? And it's like, oh, Novel's in the park with some witnesses. So we go meet Novel. She brings up some witnesses. The first lady perfectly describes Miranda's look down to a T and says like, oh, she's so helpful, she did this wonderful thing, blah blah blah, she's the best, I'm so happy with her. And then Miranda's like, someone's trying to impersonate me, I see. And then the next witness comes up and describes the quote unquote criminal or the culprit as having saved his life because there was some hostage situation and he got pushed out a window and then the culprit like grabbed him and made sure he lived. And Miranda's like, oh, I remember that. And the guy's like, you remember it because you did it. And then finally Novel's like, I don't know what to do. Oh goodness. And so then we chat with Miranda for a little bit and she's like, well, I'm the obvious choice. So it can't be me. So it's got to be my best friend, but it can't be Polly because Polly would never do anything. And we're like, holy shit, you're crazy. So we go through all the evidence with her and then she gets sad because she's like, it is me. I am the culprit. I can't believe my first investigation made me the culprit. And then we get a message from ACPU to like bring Miranda back immediately. So we get there, it's super dark, they turn the lights on, and surprise! It's Novel, Polly, and Query. And they're celebrating Miranda's accomplishments. That's right. It was like a fun little game. There's a lot here about them congratulating her, talking her up, talking about how great she is, talking about even though she fucks up sometimes, she does more good than bad. And she's kind of being like, oh no, I'm a fuck up, I do terrible things. I'm like, no, you're still the best. And it's like, okay, this is kind of annoying. Let's see. Eventually she accepts that she's done more good than bad and that she earned this like promotion that she, I think, still got for traffic. And then Polly gives her this beautiful like frame with the paper in it with all these nice things that like Novel and Miranda and Query and and Polly all wrote in there, where everyone tells her how much they appreciate her and all this stuff. And it's like at this point you're like, all right, this is kind of cheesy, but this is like some real good fucking vibes here. This game is so dark all the time that this is like a nice little thing. Also at this point, or around this point, we find out that Novel, before she became like a private investigator, was a member of ACPU, but I don't remember exactly if it was specifically because I don't think it ever designates if it was when she was human or when she was a Nikke and then she left and became part of like Exia's crew of investigators. But anyway, that's good to know. Oh yeah, and that's about it. So that wraps that up. So thank you for joining me. And next week we'll get into Nikke chapter 23, Prison, where we go into the outer room to hunt down Exotic. All right, cool. Go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.